Do you know what I'm tired of? I'm tired of this narrative that singleness is on the rise because people just want to delay their adolescence. Have you heard it? Thought leaders, pastors saying the reason people are staying single longer is because they want to hold on to their freedom. They want to be selfish with their time, so they just don't commit or get tied down. They want to delay their adolescence. I'm really tired of hearing that. Now, here's the problem. There's also a ton of truth to it. Like, people aren't just saying that randomly. They aren't just saying that to mess with us or get under our skin. They're saying that because there is a lot of evidence to back it up. So if we really are tired of hearing that as single people and we really want to change that narrative, well, then guess what? It starts with us. It starts with me. It starts with you. It starts with us being the change we want to see. And that is what episode 6 of Single Today is all about. So welcome back. This episode is called The Rise of Singleness Behind the Scenes. Because I have this new course out and it's available for free now for anyone who pre-orders Single Today. All you have to do is fill out the jot form in the description below and my publisher will send it your way. But in this episode of the podcast, I figured it'd be fun to tell you the story behind the story of this course. What do I mean by the rise of singleness? Why did I come up with and create the rise of singleness? What do I hope will happen from this course, the rise of singleness? I want to talk a bit about how this whole project came to be, why I'm so passionate about it, what I hope it accomplishes. And so let's wind the clock back about 4 years to when I started writing Single Today, which, by the way, was not called Single Today back then. It's taken so many different forms over the last 4 years. And so to anyone who is in the middle of a creative project and it keeps changing and keeps frustrating you and you keep throwing it out and trying again and having draft after draft after draft, wondering if you're failing miserably, or maybe you keep getting rejected on things. And by the way, shout out to this week's guided meditation, which is called I Feel Rejected, which maybe is for you. I just first want to say shout out to you in the middle of all of the creative process, all the different drafts, including the bad ones. It all matters. It's all part of the process, even when it doesn't feel that way. So keep going. I don't know who that was for, but let's get back to it. From the moment I began writing Single Today, I knew there was one goal I really wanted to accomplish. I wanted to help the person who is single feel seen, like whatever their journey, whether they've been single for years or are single again for the first time in years. I want them to know that they aren't alone, that there are others of us who understand, who feel their pain, who are with them. And I'm really proud of the book because in addition to lots of other things I believe I accomplished with it, I know I accomplished that. Like, it will help people who feel unseen feel seen, and people who feel stuck get unstuck. But by the time I got to the end of it, I realized I spent a whole lot of the book focusing on the individual. Like, so much of the book is about you. I genuinely want you to feel like we're sitting down at a table, drinking coffee, talking, and working through the different struggles of singleness. That's great. But I also knew that at some level there was like a whole lot more to this topic, and I was trying to figure out what that more was. And then last October, I went to Disney World with my family, and we took a family trip that we've been wanting to take for a long time. My niece and nephew are at that age where it's so they think it's the most amazing thing in the world, and so it's so fun to watch them. And my dad and I were walking one day. We were in the animal kingdom, and we were talking about this book and how so many people are remaining single and not getting married until later in life, or not at all. And as we started talking about it, we began talking about how helpful it would also be to create a resource that zooms out to like 30,000 feet and thinks about the rise of singleness at a cultural level. Because the rise is real. People are staying single way later. And that doesn't just mean there are lots of individual single people who are probably struggling. It also means our world is changing. So, like, what are the cultural shifts happening alongside these changes? What are the good things happening in our world because of the rise of singleness? But then also, what are the bad things? And what are the downright ugly things? And so as we walked and talked while we looked at all the animals, really three major questions emerged. If the rise of singleness is real, then number one, how did we get here? Like, why did people stop going on dates? When did some people start being really intimidated to date? Why did some people stop being as interested in marriage? How did we get here? But then question number two, what do we do here? The world has changed. There are millions of people who are single today who historically, by the numbers, probably would have been married by now 50 years ago. So what does that mean? How does that change things? What does that mean for churches? What does that mean for extended families? What do we do here? And then finally, number three is, where do we go from here? And this is really the big question. What does this rise in singleness mean for our future? When I say our, by the way, I'm talking about planet Earth. The rise of singleness has lots of implications for the future for all of us. Some good, some exciting, others downright scary. And it doesn't do us any favors to just bury our heads in the sand and pretend like those dangers don't exist. And so in this course, I did my best to take the individual out of the equation and talk about the implications of the rise of singleness from that higher level. I'm really excited about it. I can't wait to hear your thoughts about it. I'm hoping this course will be a conversation starter, that it will get people thinking, get people asking the really hard questions. Because remember, from the second page of the Bible, we realize very clearly that God says it's not good for man to be alone. It's Genesis 2 and verse 18. Literally, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. And we have lots of stats to back that up. In the course, I take a deep dive into them. But just for a couple of minutes, let's talk about a few of them. Let's talk about specifically, God says it's not good for man to be alone. There's some really interesting studies about men being single and men being not married, and how there's actually a lot of struggles that come with it. So I'm going to share these, but guys, first off, remember, like, take yourself out of this. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about numbers from 30,000 feet. I made so many balancing statements like that in the course. You'll hear it when you watch it. So here we go. There was a study that found that 37% of partnered men had completed a bachelor's degree at the time of this study, while only 26% of unpartnered men had completed a degree. And then 91% of married men were employed, while only 73% of unmarried men were employed. And then, not surprisingly, the average salary of a married man was much higher. Like, there's obviously something to getting married. It forces you at some level to get your life together. It forces you to figure it out financially, like to figure out your career path and all of that. But then, of course, there's deeper levels to this. Like, there's the social element of marriage. It's not good for man to be alone, not just because when humans isolate, they tend to be less productive, but also because loneliness is real. I get into all of that in the course, but just for now, health experts call loneliness the new cigarette. They say that lacking connection can increase the risk of premature death to levels comparable to smoking daily. Negative effects of poor connection include 29% increased risk of heart disease, 32% increased risk of stroke, and a 50% increased risk of developing dementia for older adults. Okay, so 100 years ago, everyone was smoking and no one thought anything of it. It took us a long while to realize, oh, maybe that's a bad idea. Today, everyone is isolating and no one is thinking anything of it. Is there going to be a similar reckoning for us when we realize, oh, maybe this whole isolating thing is bad? Or to quote God, it's not good for man to be alone. And that brings us back to the comment I started this episode with. Singleness is currently being linked with delayed adolescence and selfishness. And that's happening because it's true. But it puts single people in this weird spot. Maybe you're feeling this right now, where it's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, especially if marriage is something you really desire and are pursuing, it just hasn't happened for you yet. You're already bummed about that. And then there's a whole world of people saying, just grow up and get married already. And you're like, yeah, no, that's what I'm trying to do. But I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to like marry someone I'm not compatible with just to fix your precious little stats, right? Like, it's a lot. I get it. Trust me, I understand. And by the way, that's the exact tension Single Today was birthed out of. Like, this message, when you start thinking about singleness too much, it becomes very overwhelming. And so like, those are the moments you and everyone else, including myself, need to just learn to relax and take a deep exhale. That's what I want this book to feel like. But the whole Single Today journey is more than just taking that deep breath. It's also realizing that we are here today to live on purpose today. So whether you are pursuing a spouse or not, that we can change the narrative of singleness. Like, what if singleness stopped being seen as selfishness? And instead, single people became known as the most selfless people on earth? What if single people started leading the way and serving in the church and helping to be a part of necessary reform and truly changing the world together? That's what I want to see. Because the truth is, like, okay, single people, by and large, we have more time. We just do. By the way, shout out to all of the single parents out there. You all are the real heroes, and you are exonerated from everything that I'm saying right now. But to the single person just living on their own or with roommates, you have more time on your hands. You may be busy, but you will be busier when you have a family. And so instead of using that time to cope with the disadvantages of being single, let's take advantage of the advantages. That's what I'm trying to communicate in this entire project, especially in the rise of singleness. And so that is a behind the scenes look at this course, at this content, and why I think it's so important that we watch it and that we begin talking about all of these things. I hope you enjoyed that. I always find the thoughts behind the thoughts to be like the really interesting thing. And so I hope that podcast episode got you fired up to go through this course. And again, all you have to do is fill out the jot form that is either in the description or the show notes of this episode, and the publisher will send you the Rise of Singleness. Man, go through it and let me know what you think. Leave some comments and let me know what topics you agree with, what you disagree with, what topics you want to dive deeper into. I cover a lot in the course, and so let me know what resonates with you. And remember, we'll end here. Today, we have today. Whether you're single, dating, engaged, or married, who is one person in your life today that you can encourage? Who is one person in your life today that you can pray for, that you can serve? Singleness may be on the rise, but what if selfless serving was also on the rise? I believe it's possible. It starts with us. And so go through this week's guided meditation, get the Rise of Singleness, and we'll see you back here for episode 7 next week.